Hi, I'm Torsten. This is Literature in Pictures, and today I'm very fortunate to be interviewing the one and only Joshua Greathouse. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing fantastic, Torsten. I'm actually very excited for this interview because I know you're a good friend of mine, but also you do your research, and I've never had an interview who actually does their research, so this should be entertaining.
Awesome. We're here to talk about your career in comics, about the methods that you're using to create comics, the stories themselves, at least the ones that I read. If you want to talk about more than just Scotty, Unprofessional, and Bang, I'm up for it. But those are the ones I'm more familiar with. Before we dive into publishing itself and kind of what role conventions play in that whole game. But before we get started, like, where can people find you? I know you're on Patreon, Great House Art on Patreon. I'll put the links in the description and probably lay over later on screen in the editing process. You have Inside the Panel on YouTube. I believe you have a separate YouTube channel, but I don't know if you want to promote that or not.
That one's more my personal one. I was about to say, if you're on like a lot of YouTube, comics YouTube, you'll probably see that one because I like to interact. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. There's probably one more, but under Great House Art.
Yeah, and I'll use the Linktree link that you have on a Great House. From there, people can decide, I guess, where they go, because also on Webtoons is where they eventually can find then your actual art as well as on Patreon.
And technically Tapas, but no one talks about Tapas.
Yeah, I haven't visited.
It's what DC is to Marvel. It's what Webtoons is. Tapas is what Webtoons is their competitor. So it's the exact same content.
Gotcha. But yeah, let's take a step back and talk about when you got into writing and drawing comics. Like, how long have you been doing this?
So back in around the first grade, I was one of those lucky kids that was told he couldn't read. So it was the kind of thing like just the English language, those weird symbols known as letters that made words, made no sense to me. Tried my best. But I remember there was one day I came home, and I'm the youngest of three. My um, older brother's 11 years older than me. My older sister's 10. So there's a good chunk of time. But my sister was in high school, and she was painting. Like, in retrospect, as an adult, it's not that good. But as a child, this was like this was the most mind blowing piece because it's literally like the sun is sitting in a cafe chair with a checkered floor and a fish is coming out of the checkered floor, and then there's the moon in the background. But the thing was, it was all these complex ideas for like a second grader that I got instantaneously. That was just like, I don't need to understand word like that, especially like the floor was like rippling like water. Like, there were just the perfect amount of things that were like, I don't even know how to describe, like, I don't have the vocabulary to describe this. So I wanted to start an animation, but there were two things that kind of killed my love of animation. One, I learned about in-betweeners and keyframes, but I didn't realize that those were like multiple people's jobs. So I thought it was like one person drawing like 500, all by themselves. And I'm like, for a third grade or whatever, I'm like, that sounds terrible. Who wants to be doing that? And then the other one, which this makes me laugh to this day, was like, you have to learn how to draw a realistic human, which is basically life drawing, which is something I love to do and I need to do more. But as a kid, it's like, I can never climb that. So what was nice about comics was I could tell a story by myself. And God, I should have brought some home, but like I was at my parents recently going through the basement. There's stuff I forgot about. It's like I've been drawing comics ever since. Um, it was kind of thing. It was like it was off and on kind of thing. But then during high school, I got the lovely job of working at a brick company. I was a brick cutter, which, long story short, I've never feared death in more ways than what, like almost every day there's a new way of fearing death. And it's like, I should probably figure out what I want to do with life. So I went to film school. And then during film school, we had a lighting class, and I'm like, I could draw this faster than I could mathematically figure out how to light this. So that was the thing that kind of sent me doing comics. And yeah, since then, because I've done, so it's like the two big ones right now are Bang the Ballad of the Tiger and Unprofessional. My older web comic, Scotty Odyssey, I would like to get back to that one. Time will tell. That's the one.
That's the one I have. I know there are multiple. There are more than this one. It's just one episode, right? This is not continuous, or maybe it is continuous, but this is like a standalone.
Oh, you've not been to odysseycomic.com? I did not send you that link.
No, I have not.
Wow, I failed you. I'm sorry, Torsten, because that literally has, because I think that's like episode 3 or 4. And then I do like there's quite a bit more. Like there's like 300, 400 strips of Scotty up. Yeah, I'll send you that link. Which is basically Calvin Hobbes meets Johnny Quest.
Yeah.
But then before that, I did Boneyard Frankie, or The Horrific Adventures of Frankie. The site's gone. Like I need to archive that somewhere, because that was the Frankenstein bouncer at a strip club. And then before that, like I've had variations of Unprofessional, but then before all that was like Savant Daunt, which is, I believe, Norwegian for Black Death. Like literally, I forget which country it is. It was me being edgy, like, yes. What sounds cool and like Black Death? Yeah, it's my biking story.
But those stories date back to your high school days. Like Frankie the Bouncer and Scotty as well.
Frankie was Frankie was college, me getting out of college. Mm-hmm. And then Scotty Odyssey was right after that. And then there's a good, I think Scotty's like a good 3 to 4 years. There was a kind of thing unfortunately, money, tough times. So I had to stop drawing comics. So luckily I got to a place I could start drawing again. Then it was Unprofessional. And then since we're talking about this, I got a job working. By the way, this is Abby. She's a pain. You'll probably get to see a lot of her.
Hi, Abby.
I was working security, which the good thing about that job, as long as no one's around, they're like, we don't care what you do. So I end up drawing. The problem was I was too good at talking to people. So like, we can put you on first shift. I'm not a morning person. So I was like, well, especially Sunday, it's from 7 a.m. to, I would say 1 p.m. No one wants to bother. People are either going to church or it's Sunday, they're sleeping in. It's like, I need to work on something, but I don't want to ruin my real comic. Let's start designing this little fantasy thing that became Bang, and fell in love with it.
Cool. So how do you approach a regular, in Bang, it's called chapter. So a regular chapter, do you plot out the whole, you're working on chapter, I believe 19 it is right now. When you started doing this, did you know years ago when you wrote chapter 1 where 19 was going to be and where 30 is going to be? Do you plot those stories out, or do they come as you go?
Yes. No, so this is kind of how I do things. When I started Bang, originally it was character designs and a sketch. Then I was like, I really enjoy this. Let me do 5 pages. So once I drew the 5, I think I even wrote the full issue 1, but I was like, let me just draw the first 5 pages. Then I drew the rest. But the way I work is, whether it be Bang or Unprofessional, the first step is a ton of daydreaming. I'll go for walks, and it's literally, that's some of the most fun, because it's literally me playing around in my head, okay, well, what if we do this with the characters, or what if we do that? So a perfect example, what's a good example? I have a different example. So with chapter 4 of Bang, when they go to the goblins, I'm like, well, I know I want to do something kind of like the typical fantasy, like goblins and dwarven mind, but I'm like, how can I make it different? And I'm like, you never see a goblin in a suit. They're always dumb. So I was like, well, what if you had a really smart, then it's you start playing off of that. It's then it's also, when I started Bang, I had a rough idea of okay, I know how I want this. I at least know who the big bad is. There's a fun little spoiler that no one's noticed. the first panel, the first page, you see what's the Children of Tour symbol, who are the big, like, and that's the one who ends up becoming attached to Eddie in a certain way. But
First panel, first page.
yep.
Okay. Yeah, in the background on the wall.
So I love doing stuff like that where it's like, let me give you a hint that doesn't feel important now, but especially, man, I've dropped a couple big ones that I cannot wait for people to find those out. But the way I work is I kind of do what's called I've heard it called like the roadmap, where it's like, okay, let's say I'm leaving from Los Angeles to New York. Well, you can't just go straight, it's impossible just to go straight there. So the idea is like, well, let me stop in like Vegas, let me stop in Colorado, let me pick points to stop. So right now with Bang, we're about to enter the first like major idea / stopping point. And then it's like, okay, let's continue on from there. So like the idea, like to give you an idea, when I worked on the Prince, he was not originally an idea. It was just kind of like, well, and the other way I like to work. So especially because Bang is action, a lot of fighting. It's like, okay, this storyline, we had a group of small creatures. So let's throw in a big creature. Okay, what do I do then? It's like, okay, let's have an individual, kind of try to mix it up. So it's like, it's easy to fall in the same pattern of like, oh, do challenge, especially I don't want the Saturday morning trope of like the same enemy or the same kind of like, it feels repetitive. So like, especially with the artists, I think originally that was going to be like 2 chapters. Like it ended up being a little longer because it's like, okay, it needs to be fleshed out, and I enjoyed it. And then we had the whole puppets and strings chapter 100% because Melanie forgot about these characters. She's like, who's the Baron? I'm like, I swear I'm like the only, like her and her doctors are probably the only people who enjoy Melanie's forgetfulness. Because I use that to my advantage because I'm like, do you remember who this is? She's like, no idea. I'm like, I got to focus on them more.
I got to flesh them out. Yeah.
But yeah, then then I go to writing. And writing, it's weird because sometimes I can go in with a straight plan. I'm like 100%. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. And then we get chapter 8. Chapter 8, they're fighting a big monster. And all of a sudden, Yashmir, I think it's pronounced Yashmir, gets bitten by the monster and thrown up top. That wasn't the original plan. But I was like, well, wait a minute. If this creature's like biting her, and I don't want her like to lose an arm, what would it do? It's like, well, it would fling its head, like a crocodile or something, it would fling its head. Then it's like, well, wait a minute, what if she goes on the back? And that really changed the chapter where I'm like, oh, that makes things a lot more interesting. Because that's the thing, at the end of the day, I'm doing this to entertain myself. Like, if other people enjoy it, I'm like, oh, that's a good bonus.
So you can tell you have fun with it.
So yeah, then I write the chapters, then I kind of do page by page, laying out and you can see this on the live streams, but I'll lay out the panels, then I'll lay out the lettering. So I know like, hey, because I'll always forget. So it's like, I'll try to like make sure I leave space. But the other thing I do is I'll draw everything in the background. So if I need to move, change anything, or hopefully one day, if it gets translated into another language, it's like, cool, we have all this space. We're not just confined to this little word balloon.
Plus, I believe with the editing, it's helpful if you can change the size of a word balloon later on. If you want to reduce a sentence, take some stuff out or put some stuff in, you don't need to worry about the background having to be filled in later.
Or if you need, I have a lot of talents. Grammar and English ain't my greatest ones.
So writing, do you write a full script for a chapter of Bang, or you just basically just for yourself? Because you're the artist and writer. I guess you don't have to give yourself detailed instructions on paper that you would have to with a different artist. If you were just writing and you have someone else doing the art, you have to give more instructions what is happening on each panel or page at least. I guess for you that's more as a keeping your thoughts on paper or in line that the issue is going where it's supposed to be going, or do you write full scripts?
I write full scripts because I think here's the difference, because like you said, I'm the artist and the writer. I know exactly where I want to go, so I want to have as much detail. And yeah, it is more of a way to remind me of like, oh, okay, that was the idea of this. Especially because like it's kind of weird when I'm writing it. I'm like, one, I try to make sure I vary up the panels count. So it's like with Bang. So the other thing is with Unprofessional, this was me being like full hog, like full drawing, full, all this stuff, doing a normal size page. Where with Bang, I'm like, okay, I want to make this a little smaller. So let's set up some ground rules, which man, I highly recommend anyone is doing anything. Ground rules make your life so much easier. So like with Bang, I try not to go over 6 panels. Like, if the story calls for it, but on average, I try to do like 6 panels or less. So, I'll be looking at the pages where it's like, okay, this last page we had 4, and I'll sometimes cheat, but it's like I try not to just be like 4, 4, 4, 4. So it'll be like 4, 3, 5. And it's the kind of thing I do know too, where I'm like, what's more important? The action, the dialogue, characters. So it's like if it's dialogue or acting, you'll probably get more panels because that's what you need. If it's action, it's like there's going to be less panels because you need to see what it is. Um, so yeah, it's like, and especially because the chapters are like right now like 18. I didn't mean for it to be, but it took 6 months. I can't, it's like I'm not going to remember what I wrote on page 21 if I give myself a vague description. It's like, eh.
Yeah, and the format, does it have to do with it being a web comic that the format changes? Because for print, you also decided to go smaller. Like this is the size, which is way smaller than a regular standard size comic. But it can be because, yeah, your panels are smaller. You sometimes have just like 2 or 4 panels per page. And then lettering is also bigger. Like it's meant to be a smaller format, I guess.
So this literally was me. This is a love letter to manga. And one of the things was I like technically made a little small, like I made this 7C size of 5x7. But the other thing is since I do it all digitally, I work at 600 DPI. So what I'm really working at is 10x14. So I can technically make these up to that size without losing quality. The reason also I did it at this size, one, I'm not gonna lie, when you see the words like 5x7, like in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be bigger. So when I got these, I'm like, wow, this is actually, I'm not against it, but I was like, smaller than I was even expected. But the other thing is these first 2 volumes are coming 100% out of my pocket. So it's kind of like, okay, limitations of finances. But the other thing though, I've always tried to like, I used to work at the school newspaper, and it's the kind of thing. My lettering has always been a little bit bigger, I think, because of that reason. Like, this is the first time I've actually kind of brought it down because, especially with Scotty, like some of the like looking back, I'm like, man, that lettering is huge. But it's the kind of thing I think. Well, and the other thing I do, so if you look at a page of Bang, there's a paper texture to all the art, but the word balloons doesn't have that paper texture. So everything else is a slightly off white, but the word balloons are always white, so they're easier to read for that reason.
It's not off white. Yeah, as you said, the texture, you have like a wallpaper, like kind of.
It's literally like, I think it's watercolor paper number 5.
Okay, there you go. Let's get into the details because I do think the art holds up on a bigger screen. I think if you're part of Josh Greathouse's Patreon, you have access to the PDF files, and I'm reading those in PDF format that he uploaded on a 32-inch screen, and those double page, like it looks great. The resolution holds up, like it's on a nice display. Like I love reading Unprofessional and Bang on a big screen. So you could print those bigger. You could make it an absolute edition.
Well, so here's the fun thing. Print is DPI, dots per inch, and like the more dots per inch, the better. So like a lot of artist editions will be scanned at like 1600 dots per inch. That's how they can get like all the minute detail. With web, you only need 72 because it's easier to transfer information with Magic Lightbox. So the way I do my JPEGs are 150 DPI. So it's literally, it's like a high res version of a standard. Because the other weird thing though is, and no one's going to care. Well, like one person might care about this. If you're printing like banners or something huge, you actually want those smaller DPIs because you're printing so big. So it's like you won't be able to read it close up, but it's like, yeah, if you're 200 feet, it will be perfect. But yeah, so I could easily probably, I mean, 11 by or 10 by 14 is not, I mean, that's way bigger than an absolute. So yeah, we could do something like that. Unfortunately, it just comes down to more the economics of things. I hate to say it, but I do try to, like I said, any book of mine, I've tried to like future proof, hence doing it 600 DPI.
You can always scale down. You cannot scale up. Huh?
No, you can, yeah, you can scale down digitally. There are ways to scale up, but it's a pain and it never comes out as right.
Yeah. So as for software, I assume for writing, you just use a normal text editing software, or you use Scrivener or anything like that.
OneNote.
OneNote.
And the reason why they have it set up because you can make books, but then you can make like individual tabs, aka each page. So it's like it's nice just to be able to go like page 13, boom, page 14. Because I've done some comics written by other people. I used to spend like, I don't know, an hour or something like reformatting it. So it's like, okay, let me just take each, because, you know, they'd be like a long thing. It's like, okay, let me separate page per page. Because especially it's like, especially working for someone else's stuff, it's like, I don't need, you know, it's easy to get lost because when you're quickly like, it's like, wait, was this 5 panels? Was this 4 panels? So, because yeah, one of the things I'll do is I'll quickly like look, it's like, okay, 7 panels. Like I'll look at the very bottom, like, all right, 5 panels, 6 panels, you know, just get an idea. It's like, all right, how do we want to lay this out?
So when you say working for other people's stuff, that's the art, the illustration part. Are you mean writing for other people to draw it? Or I guess what's your strong suit? What would you do? You see yourself writing artist or someone who just enjoys the writing and draws their own stuff? I guess I know the answer, but I'll let you.
Well, I get so, and not to bash this writer because he treated me well. I was talking to a writer about doing a book, and the problem was, so way back in the day, I did a comic for Action Labs, I'm not sorry, not Action Labs, Blue Water, which is, I have no problem saying their name because they're a terrible company. I hope they burn. But I did the penciling, inking, coloring, and lettering in that book. Every issue had a different writer, and it was a mini series. And it was to the point like the writers didn't like, they did not care at all. But I worked 2 years on that book, never made a cent. So I was like, all right, I'll never let that happen again. Talked to a different writer. The plan was for me to pencil and ink it and do the lettering, especially like lettering. I'm not the best lettering, but it's like I can do enough. I can do a decent professional job. So at that point, it's like, yeah, I can letter it. But then we had a colorist. Colors fell through. So all of a sudden, it's like, we can maybe do this black and white. We then talked to, ironically enough, Scout Comics. And they're like, cool, we can print this digitally and give you 50%. Now, the writer was treating me well. He was going to give me 75%. But I'm like, wait a minute, I'm doing like the majority of the, especially we still had to do all our own marketing and stuff. And it's like, okay, wait a minute, I can digitally publish something. I'm doing all this work except for the writing. Why don't I just go off and try the writing? Hence how like I got back on Unprofessional. I've never written anything for anyone else, so it's the kind of thing. It's like I think it would be interesting. It would be interesting to see because I'm so used to being the art. Like I'm used to artist than writer. Like for me, because it's more like, and I don't know, because when you're like doing both, the writing part of it comes down to more like, okay, it's me inserting dialogue because I'm pacing and writing it, but it's like, you know, I could technically draw this. It's a weird, when you do everything, it kind of becomes a weird melding because there are times I'm like, ugh, I know Inker Me will fix this problem, or ugh, I know Colors Me will fix this problem. Then there are times when it's Colors Me, I'm like, these two other people were the worst. I hate them. But yeah, so well, and it's also, I'll admit this because like writer me. So I made this rule earlier on. Artist me is not allowed to dictate what writer me wants to do. So I can never go like, I don't know if I can draw that. It's like that is up for artist me to figure that out. Hence how I get into some of these current problems, like these current chapters where I'm like, what was I like? I never stop to think it's like this might be hard and a pain in the ass to draw over and over again.
Future you problem.
Oh, I am my own worst enemy in all the best ways.
So in your live stream, you do live streams on Inside the Panel where you literally walk through or like do the art layer by layer, and you work in layers. I guess maybe we can talk about that process a little bit.
You want me to open up said program and show you?
Yeah, walk us through how the layering works and how you usually do your work.
So this is from chapter 10. I forget which page this is, especially because I got a bunch of Zoom stuff in the way. So usually, so this is what like when I say break out the panels, this is kind of what I do first. Looking at like the script, I'm like, okay. And it's also the question of like what's a little bit more important. It's what's more important, what has dialogue, and what builds tension. So what's most important usually gets like a little bit bigger. If it's got dialogue, it definitely makes it bigger. Tension though, so the way panels are kind of like beats in a music. So it's like if you have like one big one, you're going to have less tension. But if you have a bunch of smaller ones, you know, it's a quicker kind of beat. So you're going to make a little bit of tension. Now, granted, this is like 3 steps in one. So what I'll do is I'll go through and like roughly draw. And here, you can even see like my tool sets over here. But I'll draw it like this size. So it'll literally be something like that, like at that level. Then it's the kind of thing, go away. Then I'll do it through these 4 different blues. It'll be this one, and this one. Sorry, 3 blues. So by the end, you get this kind of more. Don't know what happened here. Oh, okay. Actually, this is a good example. So pencil out all the character, pencil everything, then I'll start inking. Which there you are. But as you notice down here, so everything's this blue, which I'm like, it's a little faded, and then I have this hand over here. If you ever see like a pencil of mine and something's in black, that means I got to the inking point and realized I'm like, I have not drawn this enough, so let me like figure it out a little bit more. So, and actually, fun fact, this background element right here is the logo to Unprofessional. I just threw it back there because it worked. Basically, why draw things twice? But then with the nice thing with Bang, the only thing that kind of takes a little bit more work are, did not color those, interesting, are the speed lines, kind of this style I do. So from there, then it's adding yield colors. Usually the colors I'll do in one setting, like in one panel. This one, yeah, because this the sky one, it was like, it's kind of easier to separate the two. And rarely do I do this, but it's like once in a while for dramatic effects, I'll add more of a shadow. But typically with Bang, I'll add everything that's flat. And here, let's do this. So you can kind of see quickly my folders, but oh, that's a good one. Oh, let's do this. Come on. I hope this is the one I'm thinking of. Or and I've been using Clip Studio Paint. I've been using this over a decade. Like I used to have a Japanese version that I would import the. Oh my gosh, I would download the English patch and have to like install it myself. And like a lot of my tools, yeah, are still like some of them are still in Japanese. Hey, the page I wanted. So this is Unprofessional, but it's the same kind of rules where it's like panels. Oh man, this is an old. I need to re-letter this, but yeah. So it's the balloons were on their separate So I used to combine it. But here's the big difference between Bang and Unprofessional. So, um, yeah. So it's like we have the characters, and it's like, why did I do red? I'll switch colors, but typically if I'm doing red, huh, I guess for whatever reason I was on a red kick that day. It like blue, red, it doesn't really matter. Then it's like I'll do a like I said, I'll do a dark color at the end of the purple. But it's the same techniques kind of work. Because as you can see right here, like there's some faint blue. So then it's the kind of thing with on Pro, I separate things by layers. So get rid of those. It makes the coloring a little bit easier because then there'll be times like, hey, here's the foreground, here's the midground, here's the background. And as you can tell, I kind of so part of being human, like I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but when you look out like way far out in the sky, like buildings have like a different haze to them. That's literally you're seeing the air in between. So it's like technically, if you see like a black billboard 1,000 feet away, it won't look black. Hence why I also like the night sky, but you're literally seeing the air in between it. Hence why the different colors. So it's the kind of thing. It's like close up, it's black. Go a little farther, it's gray. And then the next step is adding all the shadows. So this is literally just me going through with a brush, or depending on the tool, but like separating the shadows. This is just going like what's going to be white, what's going to be in shadow. And it's also thinking about like, okay, I need to make these two kind of stand out. So maybe have, or like where the lighting is. Then it's adding the flat colors. Oh, fun fact, I didn't color that. I'm noticing a lot of mistakes with this page. Hooray. Um, Also, here's some old characters of mine. We got Frankie and Johnny. Frankie from Horrific Adventures of Frankie, and Johnny from Scotty Odyssey. Because I was like, yeah, why not? But yeah, so it's literally kind of going through, and this at this stage too, it's also making sure like, okay, I need to make sure my characters pop. So one way I do that, which you can't see in here, these two are actually like what will be considered pure color. All the rest, I'll add like a little bit of background color to them. So that way it's like no matter what, your eye automatically goes to these two because everything else has like a little bit of that. I think it was like a gray for that color. But then I select my shadows and boom, we got that. And then um then I'll do a little bit of rendering, like adding blush, shot like sparkle to the eyes, yada yada. In this case, like this lovely gentleman here, adding some bruising. And then we go up here, and this is where special effects come in. So lights, more lights, smoke. And do I go through and layer things? Hell no. Also, if you bought in Bing, this is where the original image for my advertisement came from. Add smoke again. So the fun thing with like smoke and a lot of these things, it takes a lot of layers to make that effect. I actually use a lot less nowadays, but yeah. So that is how a comic page is made with various things. And it's the kind of thing I was lucky enough. I got these made by a pal because he made like the Walt pen is actually based off Walt Simonson. This is the pen I primarily use, is the Namiki to ink. And then, as you can see down here, the color palette. This is all for Bang. This is literally all the colors I use. My traditional color palette is more of this. I won't use all these in a page. I'll try to limit myself, but yeah, that was the thing with Bang. It was an evolution of like, hey, how can we make this a little bit simpler without killing ourselves? So, yeah. Anyway, that is kind of any other questions about my process or?
No, this is awesome. Thank you for the insights. This is it's fun to see, yeah, how it gets created. You're using just as many layers for smoke than for everything else. But it's like in the detail, right? It's the 80-20, like you 80% or like you 20% of your time is spent for 80% of the end result, but then the remaining 80% go into all the details and all of that. And there's a
Well,
thought behind everything, right? You're mentioning the distant objects in the distance have to be shadowed out a little bit, or like a different, little bit more faded than what you want to have pop out. And I guess that's a very different perspective.
also, the other thing though, speaking of smoke, I think the other thing is the more you do this, the smarter you get. Because, like I said, that old, I don't know, I did that years before. Whereas this same, oh, how do we tackle smoke? More just kind of, I think like what I did was I colored this all in black, took a white brush or took a brush and just cut this out and then color. Because I'm like, you learn real quickly where it's like, man, doing 5 layers for smoke is not the best use of time. And the other thing, since you were asking about this earlier, here here are my lovely scripts. So this is Unprofessional. Let's just go to Bang because, I like Chapter 8. But yeah, it's the kind of thing. It's like wide panel of the area, sand, lighting shining through, a small lizard on top of a rock enjoying the sun. 2 through 4. So it's like in my mind, this is like, okay, I know this is going to be more of a camera standing still, action kind of going like boom, boom, boom. But yeah, so it's the kind of thing you just kind of go through. And there are times like, oh yeah, here's a good example. Mr. Creed. He's a little goblin. The priest. I probably need to come up with a name for that skeleton, but for now I'm like, yeah, it's the priest. So yeah, there are many times where it's like, I think a lot of times people kind of go like, oh, I need to have this, or that. And it's like, not really. Like, I need to have all these ideas laid down. And it's like, no, sometimes you need, whatever works. So this is chapter 19. One thing I've started doing, which has made a huge difference, is having the like whatever the dialogue is underneath it. So all of a sudden I'm like, I can quickly kind of look at it. But it's usually like, I mean, technically it's a full script, but it's not. I think the other problem is when people think full script, they always think Alan Moore, where it's like, let me describe everything. And it's like, not, that's a very rarity. More times or not, it's like, especially because it's like me as the artist, it's like, Yasmin exciting is jumping into the fray. It's like, cool. Okay. I kind of know I know where they are. So I don't have to describe them as much. Like they're on top of the bird, so it's the kind of thing. I guess like the longer you do something, the more you trust your team, and my team is me, so I know to trust him.
It's fun that you said first you were on Unprofessional, and then you're like, oh, let's do Bang. So is that you're currently more invested in Bang and pay less attention to Unprofessional? It's like currently where your heart is, or how do you see both the projects? Because they're written differently, illustrated differently, and they're at the different stages of progress into the series as well.
I won't like Bang. I think I enjoy a little bit more because like the smaller page size, the smaller panels, I can get through it a lot quicker. So it's a lot more fun to be like, it's like, oh man, I'm working on this idea that I had like, 3 weeks ago. With Unprofessional, it takes a while to do an Unprofessional page, but the way I handle it is Friday through Thursday is so whenever Friday starts, I'll either start on Bang or Unprofessional and kind of go through and do that. Whereas with convention season kind of comes up, I'll work on the weekends, like Saturday or so, to work on pieces. But they're different children. The thing with Unprofessional at times, I can play a lot more with drama and acting with that, especially because like the page size and the panel, like it's a little slower story, but it's 5 issues, so it's kind of like I'm getting towards the end. And the other fun thing with Unprofessional, so with Bang, I love that limited palette. It's based off of Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball, but like anything, variety is the spice of life. So it is fun to kind of go back to because like, so this is issue 5, like of Unprofessional. Same thing, lettering. But the cool thing with this was, yeah, I'll keep these. You can tell, like, okay, this palette, I'm like, let me really get in there. Let me really experiment with this palette. And it's like, Long story short, this character is just remembering like the worst time of her life, and it's it's going to sound terrible. It's fun to be able to kind of play with, to kind of go in and be like, okay, let me change, and especially playing with shadows and lighting. So, because especially, I say especially a lot. Um, it's like there's certain details I can throw in the back of unprofessionals, like I wouldn't throw into Bang. With Bang, it's a little bit more simpler. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it moving. So it's like I wouldn't throw in all this detail. Also, fun random note: drawing random clothes on the floor. It sounds easy, but then you realize real quickly you're like, I can only throw in so many shirts. It's like I gotta switch this up, but it's like I don't know why. Like making something look lived in is a really fun challenge, but at the same time, it's like I don't know what to add. But anyway, so with both of them, I don't know. The other nice thing is when I get in the weeds with one, it's kind of nice to have the other one to go back and be like, it's like, oh man, well, because like I've shown on stream, but like Bang right now, there's like 1,000 figures fighting giant monsters. So it's like at times it's like, whoo, we go back to this small group of 20 people, well, 20 figures on a page.
I mean, the pacing is different to me. It feels the 4 issues that are out right now of Unprofessional kind of handle the same material or like the same amount of material that Bang would in like 8 or 10. So Bang is paced way faster, more focused on the action, less dialogue heavy, while Unprofessional, you have a story unfolding and developing in fewer pages. It's more dense. And yeah, again, there's only 4 issues out, but I feel that the story is fleshed out so much at this point that at the end of issue or chapter 4 of Bang, you just have her like leave the village basically.
Part of, like I said, because with Bang being a love letter to manga, part of that too was like, hey, lot more less. I have more pages. I have less panel per pages, but I have more pages to do stuff. Whereas with Unpro, it's more of a Western style. So yeah, it's like, you might get like 2 or 3 worth of Bang pages in 1 page of Unpro with the amount of panels you have. So,
but it's done on purpose. So you have for Bang, you have some issues or some chapters that half of the chapter half the pages of a chapter doesn't even have any dialogue. You have like 10, 9, 10, 11, sometimes 12 pages with like 3 words or less or no words at all, going through action sequences.
As this is going to be me getting on my rusty barrel, I'm not classy enough to have a soapbox. I do hate though I feel like with a lot of comics nowadays, it feels like there has to be like a ton of dialogue per page. And there are times I'm like, what is this? What are we doing here? Like, what is this actually answering a question? Or is this because sometimes it feels like they just have to talk. Where when you read like a bunch of manga, especially oh my gosh. There's a baseball manga that I read via Viz app. What was that called? What was great about that manga, this thing blew me away. So he would have like character A and character B will talk. Character A will say something. He then just had a panel that literally was paused for character B to like just think or react to it. Like not even like big reactions, but it felt so natural because the thing is, okay, like future Torsen will know with editing, you want to get rid of the pauses, you want to make this as streamlined as possible, but that's not reality. In reality, it's like, because there are times it's like, well, wait a minute, let me process this, even if it's for a second. So with that manga, it felt cross game. I knew I was going to find it. That's the only manga we have of this creator. It's a beautiful, like heart-wrenching slice of life. But like I said, the moments, and I can find you some pages, but the moments that like just literally like give that beat really sunk into me. I'm like, oh man, you don't need to speak. And I feel like the other problem with a lot of current comics, we're always so focused on the writers. It's always the writers run. It's the writers run, even to the point where it's like, oh, this poor writer has to suffer with these lesser known creators known as artists. But it amazes me because it'll be like, wow, the same writer on different books, like this book was so much better than this book. It's like, who was the artist? Because, like I said, panel layouts with pacing make a huge difference. Because sometimes, you might get that right artist who's either adding a panel or cutting a panel to make that pacing and beat work a little bit more. So, yeah, it's the kind of thing. I think I have ideas for like future unprofessional. I have a real, ooh, do I have ideas? I won't lie. I could see myself maybe not like 6, but like definitely being like 8 or 7, like cutting down the panel, like trying to come up with some rules to ground myself a little bit more. But yeah, having silent pan, like, because silence, well, and here's a fun fact for all you kids out there. If you really want to see what someone's thinking, don't say anything. Just be as silent as possible. Especially with Americans, we get nervous and we'll just start talking and we'll end up telling you what we really think. Because yeah, it's silence is a very powerful tool.
So there's more of Unprofessional coming in the future, because I feel the 4 issues, and this goes back to, what was it, 2011? On your live stream, you showed off some early sketches of Unpro, going back over a decade. And it's at 4 issues right now. So my fear is like, you're going to put all your focus on Bang and we're not going to get any Unpro anymore because this is just the beginning of their journey, I hope.
So this is how it kind of works with, so Unpro originally, it started off as a million different ideas. Like it literally was like, the first iteration was a futuristic dinosaur planet with Victoria was a brunette, like kind of cave woman, like I say cave woman, like intelligent, but like I hate to say Tarzan, but kind of a Tarzan, lived down in the wild. Then I was like, it's a little weird. So let me try like a Hanna-Barbera, maybe as bounty hunters. That didn't work. I also think that was like the first time I ever was like, I really want to try a limited palette. So goes back to Bang. But then with Unpro, it was me going, especially at the time. So I graduated in 09, which I know you're not supposed to say when you graduated. But I entered the workforce right at that perfect time of recession where it's hard to find work. So Unpro for me was like coming up with this idea it was my frustration of not finding work. Because fun fact, the reason why it's called Unprofessional, they are terrible at the job they were hired for in issue 1. But with Unprofessional, I viewed that more like how Mignola did Hellboy, where it's like, cool, you can call it movies, miniseries, whatever, where it's like, okay, let's do them in batches, where it's like, hey, for this current miniseries is 5 issues plus. So I think standard comics right now are either 22 pages or 20 pages, depending on the art. Most times, I think like the big 2 is 20, but 22 is kind of standard. I'm hoping I can get away with this. I'm going to pitch this out to companies, but Unprofessional Volume 5, or sorry, issue 5, Words, is actually 26 pages. The reason I did this, 1, it's the climax. 2, I feel like we've put such emphasis on issue 1. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's reward the people who've stuck around this whole time. And it's like, it's technically a gimmick, but hopefully it's one of those, I think it would pay off. I actually have ideas for like the second one is pretty same thing. It was me daydreaming, kind of going like, well, what if we do this? What if we do, like, especially it's like, okay, the characters end here. What does that mean? Because the cool thing about stories, they end at the perfect moment. The problem with real life, it never ends at the perfect moment. Because it's like, I quit my job. I walked out the sunset. You wake up the next day, you're like, bills are still coming. You don't have that in a movie. They quit, sunset, credits, perfect. So, and I actually I have very, very loose ideas for like a third one. So yeah, I do. My hope is honestly, in a perfect world, it would be great to like pass on the coloring duties to someone else for Unpro, and then just have enough like time and stuff to do both of these books. Because I enjoy both of them. I get something out of each one of them, especially Vic and Borka. They don't get as much love as Bang, but man, those two are really like me in a nutshell. Like Vic is a smartass, just trash talking. Where Bork's a little bit more reserved, but he does get in his quips, and I love those two characters so much. So yeah, it's the kind of thing. In a perfect world, yeah, we'd have a nice big collection of both of those.
Yeah, and in Unprofessional, there's so many cool moments. Like I love when you change the art style whenever she starts hallucinating in issue 1 and then in 4, especially when she snaps out. You can, to me, issue 4 is like the pinnacle so far. Like it gets better with every chapter, and yeah, part 4 is just was so good because you learn so much more about their. How they think about their emotional state, what they've been through. You have those backflashes through the hallucination stage that is inflicted on her by Kano. How do you pronounce Prince Kano? Kano? Okay.
First, I'm going to tell you.
You don't know. No one can.
First, I'm going to tell you a secret. I sometimes type stuff where I'm like, "That looks cool." I have no idea. Well, here's another fun fact though. With the aliens, I base all their names off of directors. So the Princess one is actually named after Watanabe, the director of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. I forget. Borka's is named after Tartakovsky. So it's literally me taking foreign directors' names and like, well, let's just change a couple things around. Alien race.
Because his full name is what? Tuo Borka Kaino Nubu. Something like that.
God bless you, Godzilla, because honestly, there are times, like even with Bang, because for a while there, I was like, the Baron, the Duke, like, I honestly have to always go back and be like, oh yeah, that's what I wrote.
Especially does the ranking make sense? Is a Duke above a Lord? Or
someone actually asked me that once, and they're like, well, about, and I'm like, dude, fantasy made up world. Like,
it works different there. Yeah. Don't worry.
But the problem is you can't have someone be the general. Then the next time you see them, it's like the sergeant. It's like, well, wait a minute, what happened?
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to issue 5 of Unpro because you can tell that there's something has to change because she's at the end of her mental and physical strength. Like Kano already went off and attached back on with her permission, but she can't take it much longer. So he has to come off probably in the next issue. They probably have to find a different device for him. And he has to figure out that his buddy, what's his name, Hal, is actually not like his buddy, but is working against him, which is kind of foreshadowed in issue 1 because he's eating sushi right in front of him. So all those pieces falling together, I feel like we're there at this moment. I don't know if that's what if I can like get some spoilers for it.
I will say this, like, next one. This one came to me. It was such a fun little trick. So with issue 1, she has a normal pinkish skin color, but with each issue, I slowly turn down the saturation, so that's why her skin gets gray. So it's like she's always had the same
strength skin. Leaving.
Yeah, and then also, man, the other thing that's fun with Vic, I try to make her look as much as like a fashion model as possible because it was the kind of thing. It's like I want her to look like high end, like in issue 1. So it's kind of crazy, like drawing her now, especially with the like. I don't even know what that, like, I don't even know how to do that makeup wise. I just know it looks gross in the mouth where it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll stop writing my fan fiction about Unpro if you have better ideas. So.
Oh, man. Well, I won't lie, because Unpro to me, like I said, it was the frustration of like finding work. The second one, I think, well, and it's also, like I said, there's stuff I set up in this first Unpro that would be resolved in a third one. Hi again.
He's talking now.
Yeah, because wait, can you guess what I'm talking? Because I'll give you a clue. It's what? Well, no, I won't give you a clue because you might figure it out too quickly. Because I set something big up that I didn't resolve.
There's multiple things that are said. Well, do you mean at the end issue? That's why I was like, I hope he's not abandoning Unpro, because the end issue of issue 4, how it ends, is like Walker apologizing to his clansmen. Whether that's symbolic to you apologizing to the characters for not continuing it. Plus, you have the graffiti in the background with Bang like on the wall in the last page. I was like, this is the reason why you guys are like.
No. Honestly, I could throw it up again. You're kind of close there. No, with Borka, it was always well, it was the kind of thing. A lot of stuff talks about like family. Blood is thicker than water. With these two characters, it's like they are each other's family, and it was also and spoiler, with these two, they will never romantically get involved. Because it's the kind of thing, and I think like
it's like siblings.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the kind of thing I've noticed, like in every cinema or every story, if there are two characters, like, well, they gotta hook up, and it's like, do they? Like, does it add to the story? Because if you're going to do that, it's like there's a lot of work you got to set up with that.
Yeah. So my thoughts were like, okay, if Kano has to come off her arm, there's no way around it. Otherwise she dies, and then it's not going to happen. So, but what is a reason for them both to still work together, or like for the three to work together moving forward if he's separated? And I could see how Borka might get kidnapped by Hal, and then Kano and Vic have to team up. Kano for the reason of wanting to go back to his homework, and she being his vessel. Maybe she finds a container with like some liquid that can hold him. And then her needing him to get Borka out of Hal's like hostage situation. So it's like, I'm like, okay, like I got some ideas here.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say.
Okay, I'm not gonna get you there. Okay, fine.
Hey, I told you that you're going to get 4 extra pages.
Oh yeah, there you go. 4 extra pages. So the next issue will be out in 2026.
Honestly, because I'm getting close to halfway. Well, I guess here's my plan. Get about like page 12 or so. I want to pitch it out to like Image, Dark Horse, a couple of those companies, and then it's the kind of thing, kind of go from there. So, yeah, because with Unprofessional, that's just a series I've been enjoying a lot. So, and it's also, how to put this, Bang is me having fun, because the good and the bad thing with Bang, it technically doesn't fit anywhere. Because it's like, it's not really a manga, because it's not black and white. Because even like I submitted to Viz Originals, they're like, nah, we're good. But at the same time, I don't blame Western companies, are like, we don't want it's a 100-page fantasy that's a weird size. We're good. Unprofessionals is the perfect package. So I am kind of hoping like, aha. But yeah, it's the kind of thing. It's the other thing with like, I even completely forgot I threw Bang on the graffiti. That's just me. You got to keep in mind, like these pages take hours, and it's just me kind of keeping myself, like giving myself entertainment. Because you've seen the film Akira, right?
No.
You've never seen Akira?
I want to read the manga first, so I don't want to get anything spoiled. And I have the box set behind me, but I haven't opened it yet because time. And you guys always make me watch so many movies for movie club. So I'm
changing my vote now to Akira for now on. But there's an Akira reference in Bang that no one's gotten. There's actually a couple. Someone's gotten one, the reference, but there's one blatant one that I'm really surprised that no one's gotten. Like, it is a huge...
The opening page is a reference to something. The bolts are a reference.
So the opening page, that one's an homage to Dragon Ball, because it's the original Goku. It's like page 2. He jumps off the cliff perfectly. So with Bang, I'm like, well, she does not jump off the cliff perfectly.
No, she's not trained.
Well, it's also Pig Monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the other thing, it's like Bang's last name is it's actually an homage to, because it's Cho Bang and Cho Akira. Cho being Frank Cho and Akira being Toriyama.
Mm-hmm. That's her dad, right? Cho Akira.
Probably never seen him, but it was the kind of thing I'm like, because it was literally like, yeah.
But there's a lot of Bang out there. There's, I counted, 434 pages, and then there are some that are in development, halfway done through chapter 19 that you're working on right now. So this is like a good thick size if you printed all of them. But you're working, so you have volume 1 is printed in this beautiful format. You're working on volume 2 that I assume is coming out in the same kind of format to have matching spines.
The printer literally just told me today, they're like, oh, we got your files. We are starting on this. So it's like, hooray.
Nice. So is your plan to just self-publish them, or still try to pitch the idea, continue pitching the idea?
I think right now, because not a fun thing to admit, but so with the Kickstarter not going through, I was like, you know what? I had enough people who kind of want this. I'm like, I will print volume 1 and 2. And from there, I'm not quite sure where we're going to go from there, because it's the kind of thing. Also, I know I call these volumes. I view more of this like the original floppies, where it's like, this is not like this won't be the end result, but it's like, this is a cool. I'm not going to lie. I'm actually, I was so happy when I read this, because I'm like, past me did good enough work where I'm like, man, this is actually easy to read, which I was a little worried about. But yeah, then the hopes is like hopefully getting bigger and bigger. With publishers, I think right now with Bang, it's two things. It's me having fun, because part of me is always like, I want to keep the rights, but part of me is always worried with an editor where it's like, you can't do that. Like, especially it's like, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of time on pages. It's like, no, we need this out. Like, you got deadlines where it's like, I'm in the camp where it's like, I'd rather have something take a little bit longer, but last forever, than me hitting a deadline and being like, no one cares about in 2 years.
Yeah, I believe Image a lot. Like, you keep the rights. Like, Image doesn't take your rights away. The thing is, like, you still have to have somewhat like comic book format, right? Like,
I was gonna say, and I love Image for this. They were technically the only ones to formally go, we're good on, like, they rejected Bang, and I'm like, you know what? And I'm not even joking. Thank you for taking the time to reject me, because a lot of companies now it's just silence, and it's
just ghost you.
Yeah. So it's the kind of thing with Bang. I don't know. And yeah, there's certain companies I could kind of see it going well. And it's the kind of thing, I won't lie. If all of a sudden I got to like volume 10 of these little guys and they were selling well, I guarantee you a company would come along and go like, because the thing I've learned, no one wants to print fantasy. Everyone wants to reprint fantasy.
That's why there's so much self-publishing in fantasy, and that's not only in comic books, it's like in novels as well. Like, I think fantasy novels are the most self-published genre there is.
But then you get stuff, I don't know, because like I'm going through like the Dragonlance series right now. You get like finished series that all of a sudden people are like, oh, this has an audience, let's reprint it. It's like, yep.
Yeah. And I can imagine it's difficult to pitch Bang, because you're shifting a lot. Like, you can't give them, oh, this is what this series is about, and then we're staying on that theme, because then later on you have like more horror elements. You go with the artist, you go in like psychedelic horror. Then with the goblins, you have more fantasy, or like Lord of the Ring themed in the caves with the goblins and fighting down there. You have Lord Thor coming up. It's more mystic and magical. I guess it's like overall realm is fantasy, but there are so many subgenres, or not subgenres, but like going into different like fantasy adventure versus horror stories.
Well, my thing with Bang was there was a couple other rules. One, I love Lord of the Rings. I love D&D, but it's like I feel like a lot of things they've gone to that well too many times. So it's a lot of stuff is like, fantasy always kind of feels like high fantasy always just feels like Lord of the Rings, like light or watered down. The other thing was no Norse mythology, which I love Norse mythology. But same thing, like too many people have gone to that well. The other thing is I try not to fall into the typical fantasy tropes. So like you said, because like with the artist, it was literally me. That was me playing. Now, so if you play the Witcher DLC, there's a character who like summons a guy who serves his wife. And to me, I'm like, that's a cool idea. But they didn't go far enough. Like I'm like, I could do this better, because I can't tell you how many. And that's actually a lot of people go online, be like, man, this is what's wrong. I'll literally look at something and I'm like, that's kind of cool, but what if, and then you start playing with that where it's like, and that's how I get a lot of my ideas. It's kind of like, especially, I haven't gotten there yet, but I can't tell you how many times I've watched Doctor Who and I go, that's a good idea, but what if we did? So yeah, like I said with Bang, like you said, yeah, it's different genres, which I think that kind of helps keep it, especially for me, because like right now we're in the middle of a weird biker gang storyline, and it's like, yeah, it's nothing like the last two storylines.
Yeah, and the Blade started fighting Bang, so that came out of nowhere. But well, I'm interested to see why that is.
Like, I'm not even joking, my dude, because I was like, with her, like, because I wanted to have strife with the group, but I'm like, this is going to be 20 chapters away. Then all of a sudden I'm writing, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, this happened, so we got to address this. Well, especially Eddie's return. Yeah, that definitely, like, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I can't just ignore this. Then that's that one pebble where it's like, because the thing is, with Yasmin, when I first introduced her, no idea who she was. Even I just gave her the name of the Blade because it sounded cool. I have now come up with a good backstory where I'm like, okay, this is why. And the cool thing is, if you know at least where you're kind of going with stuff, you can sprinkle like little ideas. Hence why like the artist was like, oh, they don't know. That's literally me as a creator being like, I know, you all don't know, but one day you'll look back and go, that son of a bitch.
And it's, yeah, the character development there unfolds over multiple, like you don't have it all like dumped on you in the first few chapters. It happens over time. Even when you mentioned that you had the big baddie in the first panel, it's like, oh, really? You consider Lord Thor to be the bad guy? Because yeah, he's not good. He's not, to me, not bad. I thought the Empire was the bad, like the big nemesis. And Lord Thor, I mean, he has his own agenda. I don't know who's fighting or why he needs Eddie, but it's interesting because you have multiple players, and that's what it's like a chess match, right? You have the Empire. Within the Empire, you have multiple, like, I guess, interests. You have Lord Thor, then you have Bang, who's like, just I got to figure it out because I was kicked out of my village.
Have you ever read or watched Inuyasha?
No.
And so Inuyasha, like, I love the series. Like, it has some of the coolest characters, especially because it's based off Journey to the West. But they have the biggest problem is every storyline features the same villain to the point where it's like, yeah, we get it. Your machination's a machination. Like, it gets almost to a trope of itself of how many times, like, oh, you think you defeated me, but this is what I wanted. I hate that so much to the point where, and it's like, it doesn't feel like the world's a lie. Because it's like, as we all know, it's like there's certain things happen because of our control and outside of our control. Sometimes it's like it can be something as where we shop, who we work for, vote, whatever, yada yada. Even to like, oh, if enough of us buy this brand of car, you're going to see more of this kind of car. But then there's other stuff like around, it's like, this happened before I was born. These choices were made by someone I have no interaction with. That's the real world. So I always hate when like any creating fantasy or like any world where it's like, it's always because like G.I. Joe, a lot of Saturday, and I call it the Saturday morning villain. It's like Inspector Gadget with Dr. Claw. It's like there was no one else besides Dr. Claw. Like you couldn't come up with someone else.
And the Rogues Gallery.
Well, what's funny is this is originally supposed to be 30 minutes, so I do apologize. I do want to get this one out. So I used to play Zelda Breath of the Wild, and they introduced like the pigs. I'm like, okay, pigs are the main bad guys. But then they introduced the lizards. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, it makes sense. No humans, power vacuum. Turns out the lizards were working with the pigs. I'm like, that is dumb and lame. And if I ever do it, and I did in Bang, hence the pigs and the lizards.
They work together. So there's one, I feel like there is one common theme in all of your stories, which is like a group of rogues involuntarily fighting against their authorities. And the authorities are chasing them. It's the same in Unpro and Bang. A bit of Scotty Odyssey. I guess I might not have read enough of it to completely test that statement, but at least Bang and Unprofessional. Do you agree? And if you do, where does that come from?
I think it agrees. I think it's like I grew up in a very conservative, like religious kind of household. Especially it was the kind of thing like, you know, you go to college, you're supposed to go on a mission, you get married, you have kids, you know, life's planned out. Life has not, especially like leaving college, life has not worked out. Especially I feel like a lot of us, life has not worked out as how we thought it was planned. So I think like I end up writing characters who are like feel on the back foot or that because it's like that's just how I feel in life. Because a lot of these characters are, you know, they're me to a certain extent. Because it's like, I mean, like with the artist, that storyline, it's an artist who, it's someone who's working so hard because they're like, yeah, I'm sacrificing everything now, but when this pays off, you know, or it's like, because even like with the Empire, man, I'm not even joking. There are times I've just straight up quoting politicians in that because I'm like, that's my world right now. Because like one of my favorite lines are, there are more important things than living. And I did not come up with that dialogue. That was straight politicians. Yeah, I've said it before. I've said it before. If you need good, like evil dialogue, politicians, like, because they'll say things where you're like, oh wow. But yeah, it's the kind of thing you write who you are. And I'm not saying like everyone's like a serial killer or all this stuff, but it's like because to be a good writer, you have to ingest, you know, and I've talked about like this, my inspirations for this, and that. And it's the kind of thing, and especially you get to a point, even with your villains, it's like, cool. Like some of them are just straight up evil, but then some of them are evil because they think they're doing good. Like with the Empire, they literally think they're doing good. And it's like, you really aren't. You're torturing, maiming, like you are terrible people.
They're maiming kids and letting them work for them. I don't know. Do they believe they're good?
Well, here's the thing. The rhetoric, they do believe they're good. It's two things with the kids. It's the idea of that is it's better to cut off like one kid's hand than have to kill a village. Now, is that right? No. Is that how?
Their thoughts, not yours.
Well, and also, you know where this comes from? I won't lie. This is straight up 13 Assassins. Because in that movie, I appreciate where like this guy's evil. It's like, well, how evil is? Oh my! Whoa! There's no question this man is evil. Yeah. So after that movie, I was like, you know, that's how you do a villain. Like you make it clear.
You talked a little bit about your influence earlier. I think there's one name we haven't mentioned, and I don't know if I was the first one to mention it. I mentioned it on my review of Volume 1 that your art is very similar to Mike Mignola with less background graphics. I don't know how serious people took me. And then you have Anshuman from For the Love of Comics who said the same thing on the live stream with Omar. I was like, okay, so I'm not the only one who sees it like that.
Absolutely. And I want to say, Josh, thank you. I did get your mail and I did look at your comic. It's just been hectic over here, but I read the 2 issues, I think, that was sent to me, and it's very stylish. Reminds me of Mignola at parts. I really liked it. I wanted to go over, talk a little bit about those high kicks and the kind of velocity and all that stuff in an email, but I've just been so behind. But thank you.
When I first like started getting into the hobby, it was me looking for what at the time were like back issues of Hellboy. I love Mike Mignola, especially, man, that man's a genius. And when in doubt, yeah, black it out, because I've learned like, especially when I went to college, I went to SCAD for sequential art. At that time, the big trend was not having any spot blacks. It was all this open, like just having like deadline flat colors. And it killed, like I was having the hardest time with that. And the thing because the thing with Mignola, like he went 1,000% into composition and storytelling, whereas like detail and rendering, he is trying to get as far away of that as possible. I'm still a little bit of detail rendering, but also I kind of like, I don't know, some of my
At least
like
keep your details in your rendering. I think that's something that stands out a lot, and I appreciate the background.
I won't lie though, especially with like my nature background, I'm not like going, oh, this line will represent. It's literally like me hacking slash. I'm like, yeah, this works. No, but it's one of the kind of things. It's like because Frank Miller and Sin City is another big one, but I love like that spotting rich blacks, that graphic look. Because my mentor Brian Stelfreeze, he did an assignment. It's an interesting assignment. He's like go through, pick like it's like 50 or 75 like images of other people's works that you kind of want to emulate. Like just pick different artists. Don't think about it too much. Just pick like what works for you. And everything I picked was very graphic. Even like the Adam Hughes pieces I picked. Like Adam Hughes loves to render, but I remember Brian going like, yeah, you found the like couple graphic Adam Hughes pieces. So it's the kind of thing I love. Sorry, I got an angry cat. Well, because even like with Toriyama, he spots blacks as well. But yeah, it's Mignola's been. You were 100% right on bullseye with Mignola. So it is interesting listening to people being like, "This is where this came from." Because there are some people I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's 100%," or like, "Oh, that's something I never thought of." There are other times I'm like, "Swing and a miss." Just
some stuff that happens unconsciously and sometimes on purpose that you put references in. Sometimes just, I guess, the influence. I mean, the whole environment influences you, and sometimes some stuff pops back up and you might not even know where you saw it, and then people remind you, it's like, or tell you like, this looks like this, and you're like, oh, maybe.
Or the problem is too, someone will have seen something like in their life and they're like, oh, you got this from them. I'm like, I have never heard of them.
Yeah. Awesome. We mentioned in the beginning where to find you online, but you can also be met in person. I guess you are going to HeroesCon in June. Whether you have a table or not, last time we talked, you weren't sure.
I officially got the word. I got a table. So yes, I will be at HeroesCon in June 16th through the 18th, I want to say.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I think when we talked about it was like June 14 to 16, but it's sometime mid of June. You'll be at HeroesCon with a table. Anyone who is there should go and visit your table and grab a copy.
When in doubt, Torsten's right. 14th through the 16th. Like
I'll put it somewhere on the screen.
Like I said, when in doubt, Torsten's right.
Oh, it's not a date I Googled. It's like literally just a note I took when you talked about it. Fun fact with HeroesCon, they either go from like the 20th, they either switch like the second week to the third week. So next year will be like the 20th, then it's back to like the teens. So they always kind of switch, but it's always in June. But it's a conference you've been to for many, many years, decades even, I guess.
I mean, my knees. No, it's the kind of thing. Yeah, I'm on a decade plus if you want to look at each. It's honestly my favorite con because it's the kind of thing, a lot of other cons, and it makes sense. Like you have celebrities, Power Rangers, wrestlers, old actors, which is cool. And I get it's like they're pop culture. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But what's always a shame is it always feels like, oh, we got all these guests. And, some, I don't know, comics artists near the bathrooms. I don't know, whatever. With HeroesCon, it's the opposite. It's like, hey, have you made comics? You're a guest. Have you not made comics? Enjoy the other cons. Because the two biggest names they've had, Daryl from Run DMC, who's a comic book writer, and they had a little indie guy known as Stan Lee. He may have made one or two. But it's also crazy. There's a lot of cons. They'll be like, oh, here's an artist list. With HeroesCon, they're like, hey, here's our featured guests. Here's our indie artists. Here's our artist alley. Like they have three, one of those lists are not only longer than the other cons, but they have three of them. Like it's insane.
I believe last year was the first year you actually had Bang with you. can you like a little bit resume or like summary of how that went? Do you feel like the convention helps you making Bang more familiar, bringing it to the people? How like people that visit your desk or your table, what are they most interested in? And
so at HeroesCon, it's a lot of original art. So more about commissions and original art. I feel like, truthfully, the biggest help with Bang has been YouTube channels like this, Near Mint Condition. Because the thing is, especially, it's like, hey, this crazy wacky thing, go read it. You can go try it out for free on Webtoons. And it's like, I don't care who you are. It's like, well, okay, money's a bit tight for everyone, so it's like, oh, let me go enjoy the free. The thing with conventions, they're definitely getting into a weird place because and luckily, HeroesCon, like one thing they do is an art auction to kind of keep ticket prices low. Because if memory serves right, like a weekend pass for 3 days is $60, whereas like most cons, that's like a 1 day pass on like a Thursday. So like, because a lot of them, like Dragon Con, I think Dragon Con tickets are like close to $200. And by the time you do parking, like you're spending a couple $100 before you get through the door. So I think we're in this weird kind of growing pain where it's kind of like, well, especially too, since we're on this topic, Kickstarter has made cons very interesting because it used to be, it's like, oh, I have to go to the convention to get this book. Well, now you got Kickstarter because it's like, I remember there was one year I was like, oh, I'm excited. Oh, wait, I already pre-ordered that. Oh, wait a minute, I already pre-ordered that. It's kind of a weird thing. So I think, but the biggest thing though that cons have that you can't do, there is still something magical about meeting someone in person. Online, you can forge like friendship, you can forge a lot online, but there is something, we're still tactile creatures where meeting in person makes a big difference. And man, I won't lie, I hate typing, especially trying to be funny or witty in a very quick thing while trying to type it, and then the chat goes by. It's a hell on earth. But yeah, so cons, once again, it's like right now, cons help with Bang, but overall, I would say YouTube is a bigger help, like social media and all that.
Sounds good. That said, if you're in HeroesCon, definitely go visit Josh.
And it's the kind of thing like, especially if you're an artist, I've given out many profiles. If you have any questions about, hey, how do you do this? If like an artist just curious, yeah, come up and chat with me. Like, trust me, this original interview was supposed to be 30 minutes long. I'm pretty sure after Torsten's done editing, it might be a good solid 90.
That could very well be, and I appreciate the time.
I looked up, I was like, oh boy.
If anyone has any questions, put them in under this video, and I'll ping Josh to go and answer them if he doesn't already like pay attention to it himself. I'm sure he will, but we'll follow up on any questions that you may or may not have. And I appreciate the time, Josh. It's been fun talking to you. Again, I'll put all the information to the description, and people will not have an excuse not knowing how to find you.
Also, this has been a blast because I felt like no one really cared about Unprofessional. So to have like someone go like, I was worried you're going to end it like without finishing it. It's like,
the ending, I'm not going to lie. It's like, it feels kind of like nostalgic already or melancholic. It's like him apologizing to his people. And then the reference to Banks, like you're like kind of saying goodbye to your book. It's like, plus that, and like the issues are not really coming out at the same cadence as Bang is being published.
Like I said, it's just, it takes, especially like doing those shadows. Well, the problem, like, because I have it, not a problem, but I do have a day job. So it's the kind of thing, it's like, it's hard, when you add other factors, it's like, oh, you have kids, you're married, two, like, because doing those, it was, it's easy for me to clip and be like, here's the shadow layer. That takes a long time, especially like, because there are times it's like, let me carve this in. That's not right. Let me change it, So it's just, it takes a while for that product, especially there's a reason why professional comics are done with a team. Because even like manga is done with it. I think even European are technically, they have assistants. I'm just a fool that's like, let's
I mean,
do everything.
European comics like Asterix or stuff, they also don't, it's like one issue every 2 or 3 years. I can just, Western or American comics is just one per month. It's like, yeah, you have to have a team to do one per month.
We're kind of in the weird middle ground because it's like manga's like, and it's insane, 16 pages a week, or it's like 46 a month. It's something like that. But they're like pages, 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 produce, produce, produce. Europeans are like, we're gonna sit back and enjoy the art. It's gonna take a while, but you'll enjoy the art. America's in this weird in between where it's like, we gotta do X amount, but we really like having complex art.
Which is good. You push yourself to do better, to do it faster. But yeah, at some point you have like just natural limitations that are time. And
well, some point I really need to learn how to draw if you look at stormtroopers, they're amazing because they all look the same. Same uniform, same helmet. I could copy and paste that. Me, I'm like, I got to make everyone a unique person.
But you even individually draw all the birds that are in the background. So even if they all look the same, it wouldn't be to your benefit.
Well, as I was say, the funny thing with Unpro, his henchmen, there's like 5 or 6 different alien species that he's employed. But then it's like they have that concrete like this is the base, but then I'll switch up their designs because there's like a werewolf, the worm, the tech dude, concrete. There's the moth. I always forget about the moth. Yes. You probably can't hear. She's literally like scraping. Abby is my 15 plus cat. She owns a house. So yeah. Hi.
You got to work her into one of the stories.
Yeah.
You're afraid of what would happen to animals in those series.
I was about to say I love and it's like slight spoiler for what? I'll put this like slight spoiler for Unprofessionals if you haven't read it, but I do want to chat about this. With issue 3 of Unprofessionals, I had the dogs. What are you doing? Sorry, she's literally being the worst. So I introduced the dogs with that because it was the mindset. I'm like, there are so many things you can't do to an animal that you can do to a human. Like you can overwork. Can you still hear me?
No, I can. I wanted to say they're not as cute as Abby though, so it's fine.
Yeah. No, I tried to make them as ugly as possible, but the idea was because it's like I had 2 issues of just like mowing people like humanoids down, and I knew no one would have an issue with that. But the second I introduced like the dog kind, and they're not even dogs, they're different kind of creatures. But I knew because it's like if you look that conversation between Vic and the prince, I always call him the prince. Like I even forget his name is like I think it is Kano.
Kano.
What did I name that after someone? That had to be another director. I just can't think who it is. Also, if you're a creator, make as many notes as possible because you're going to forget and people are going to ask you like, hey, how do you pronounce or where did this came from? And it's like,
That's fun to hear that perspective. I talked to Ram, or I heard Ram V talking about it. He's like, I'm never going to write any ideas down because if it's a good enough idea, it'll stick in my mind. If it's not, and I'll forget about it. It wasn't that good to begin with. But I was like, is that true though? Because if I have a great idea and I try to remember, it's like, and I can't remember, it's like, that doesn't mean the idea was wrong. It just means my memory is horrible.
Well, see, I think it's a couple things. I play along with that as well because they're like, I have like, especially for the second thing of Bang, there's a piece of dialogue I have, and it's the kind of thing I keep telling myself this dialogue over because it's like I've kind of refined it. But yeah, I think the problem is like, one, you never know what idea is going to pop, but like ideas are a dime a dozen. It's how you change them and kind of refresh, because it's like, especially, people taking like the Bible, Shakespeare, yada, yada, but it's like, how do you change it? How do you, what googly eyes do you glue onto this to make it different? So I actually do agree with that because, and I think for some people, if you do have a terrible memory, it makes sense you have to write things down. like I said, I like to daydream and kind of go like, well, wait a minute, let's do the. And I've had, oh, okay, to give you an idea, like originally at the beginning of Unprofessional, they were supposed to be at like a taco stand or maybe like I was thinking Pho, because Pho was just introduced to the US at the time, like in a parking lot. And I'm like, but then it was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want her, because it was like, I want her to kill them, but not directly, like not just like have a body, because it's the kind of thing, it's like you can't just have a body lying there. It's like, okay, how do we solve this problem? Especially because I'm like, I need her to rob this job. But if like, oh, wait a minute, these two, like, I don't need it to get out that, and it's like, how do I solve this problem? Oh, the vacuum of space. So it's the kind of
that gets you another crazy scene when she as a girl like floats in that vessel past it and sees them outside, so you get that payoff there too of the traumatizing event. So it ties in perfectly.
Because the other thing, yeah, another spoiler, but the other big spoiler, I don't know if you noticed, Bick always kept saying, it's like, I don't want to die underground. I don't want to die underground. So that's how her mom died.
Yeah. And on that fun note,
mothers, look, if it's good enough for Walt Disney to kill off moms, I can do it too.
There you go. Can call Vic Bambi.
Look at that's the thing with Bang. It's technically the anti-Disney movie. I killed the dad. I didn't kill the mom. I killed the dad.
All right, Josh, it's been fun. I want to thank you for being here. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. If you want to talk to him directly, again, he's on Patreon, or if you're part of the NMC Discord already, he's there.
I was about to say, if you're around NMC, it's pretty easy to get a hold of me one way or another.
All right. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Torsten.
You let me know. You good to start?
Yeah, I'm good to start.
Okay. Hi, I'm Torsten. This is what?
Wait a minute. Let's just do this.
Yep, no worries. Don't hit the escape key.
That again.
That's a beautiful thing about not doing a live stream. Like I wouldn't be able to keep up with questions anyways, because I want to focus on who I'm talking to, not on any weird chat. Plus, you can edit stuff like that out.
Do me a favor though, just I know it's not in your style. Put that at the end as a blooper. That was too perfect.
Sure.
Professional.
Unprofessional. The unprofessionals.
Right.
Let's make that the title.